1.4 Journey's End, the last update of Terraria. Wait, hold up. Hold up, that's not right. Where is it? Here it is. 1.4 Journey's End, the second to last major update in Terraria. For now, that is. This update added so many things. It added new amazing items, new amazing bosses, and a new difficulty. Today, I want to talk about one of the coolest things they added in Journey's End, the Zenith. The Zenith is the final sword in the game, if you can even call it a sword. Look, whatever it is, it's strong and so fun to use. I mean, look at that animation. They put so much work into this item and it was really worth it. However, you don't get the Zenith till very late game. Basically, there's a point where you don't really need it anymore. Although, that's basically the case for all final items in any game, so that's kind of an unfair criticism. All that being said, the concept of the Zenith, taking many of your swords throughout your journey and turning it into the ultimate weapon of the game, just feels so satisfying. However, even though the crafting process of the Zenith is certainly the most complex in all of unmodded Terraria, I'm looking at you, Soul of Eternity, the Zenith barely scratches the surface for all of the swords in Terraria you can get. So that begs the question, can you beat Terraria using only the swords made to craft the Zenith? One thing I want to get out of the way before we start the video is that two other people have actually done runs like this. The first one I'm going to mention is the Wand of Sparking, who did it in normal mode. The second person I want to mention is actually really impressive. His name is Chief Logan, and he actually completed this challenge in master mode, and I believe the first part of his series was uploaded before the first part of Wand of Sparking series, so I'm pretty sure he was the first person to do this challenge on YouTube at least. So, that being said, I'm going to leave a link to the first video in his series down below. He has finally completed it, which is really awesome to see, and I encourage you to all go and watch that video as he did it before me. One thing I will say is that I did this challenge all the way through without looking up if anyone had done it before, so I could figure out my own strategies to solve the problems that we face throughout the series. However, still, please go down and check out Chief Logan. He did it first, so I want to give him the credit for being the first to complete it. He also completed it in master mode. This is going to be in expert mode, so his video is definitely going to be more impressive than mine. But all that being said, I hope you guys enjoy the video, and let's get into it. I spawn into an expert medium world with Crimson as the world evil. I choose to start off Bullets and Vanity as well as a clock, just to look cool, and the clock helps me keep track of the time for recording reasons. We actually spawn with a usable weapon, the Copper Short Sword, and our first Zenith Sword. This sword is, well, there's no other way to put it. It's quite underwhelming. We definitely need an upgrade. So, what are our options? Well, there are technically 5 swords we can get at this point. The Lightsbane or Blood Butcher, depending on your world evil, the Enchanted Sword, the Star Fury, and the Blade of Grass. So what do we need to do to get each of these swords? The first 2 we can get by getting a gold pickaxe and mining the evil lore of the world. The next 2 we need to get a little lucky. As for the enchanted sword, we either need to find an enchanted sword shrine or get really lucky by finding an enchanted sword underground, just how we did in the first part of the 100-Day Summoner series. And for the Star Fury, we're going to need to find some gravitation potions underground and find a floating island, and hopefully the floating islands we find have a Star Fury in it. As for the Blade of Grass, well, I don't really want to spend time killing jungle enemies with this Copper Short Sword, so we're going to skip that for now. I start off by exploring the underground in hopes of finding easy gold and easy Criminite, and maybe even an enchanted sword shrine. I end up finding an underground house with a chest, and afterwards I end up dying so much from further exploring that I decide to just stick to the surface and build the first house and wait the night out. The next few days I spend exploring the world a bit more and exploring the underground more in order to hopefully gain access to a better weapon than this stupid Copper Short Sword. After a bit of exploring on the right side of the world, I actually end up finding a 1-block wide tunnel going underground. That can only mean one thing, an enchanted sword shrine. Or so I hope so. You see, these shrines can actually give you 2 different swords. The first one being the enchanted sword, obviously, and the second one being the sword called the Terraria, which is not a crafting component of the Zenith. However, the latter option only has a 2% drop rate, so in a majority of cases, you will be getting the enchanted sword, unless you are extremely lucky or in this case, unlucky. Thankfully, we end up getting the enchanted sword, so we can continue on. I use our newly acquired enchanted sword to explore the rest of the world and find the location of our jungle. The enchanted sword is such a huge upgrade from the copper short sword. It just does a ton more damage, it has a projectile, and best of all, it is auto swing, so no clicking needed. After finding a good entrance to the underground jungle, I immediately rushed down in order to start gathering the required materials for the Blade of Grass, the next sword that I look to make. I am also simultaneously looking for gravitation potions in the chest so that we can look for floating islands and find the Star Fury, as it will prove to be one of the most important weapons for this whole run. While exploring the underground jungle, I end up finding a very important item known as the Feral Claws. This accessory grants you bonus melee speed. More importantly, it makes all melee weapons auto-swing, saving my fingers greatly during this run. After many deaths attempting to explore the underground jungle biome, I decide to set up a house in the jungle so that I can develop the pylon network and be able to get to the jungle much quicker. Pylons are certainly a complex system in Terraria, however, there's a trick to make it a little bit easier. In every single biome except for the snow biome, as long as you have the arms dealer and the nurse in the same house by themselves, the arms dealer will always sell you the biome pylon. So, that being said, I head over to the Crimson in order to break an orb so the arms dealer can move in. I spend the next few days doing essentials like gathering materials for fishing and exploring more areas underground like the underground ice biome in order to find the necessary accessories for progression. After gathering everything I felt was necessary, I decide to go take on our first boss, the Brain of Cthulhu. Part of the reason I chose the Crimson World is how generally easy the Brain of Cthulhu is to defeat. In order to gather the items required for progression, one does not even technically need to defeat the Brain of Cthulhu, only to gather the materials dropped by his creeper eyeballs. However, I still take the time to defeat him in this case because the Blade of Grass is just so big and has enough knockback to keep him away. The next few days are spent exploring the underground desert biome in order to find the magic conch, which can teleport you to either ocean, increasing the speed at which I can explore the rest of my world and building more houses in different biomes in order to prepare for the expansion of the pylon network. I also spend time terraforming the ground around Spawn, as well as setting up some platforms in order to prepare an arena to fight the Eye of Cthulhu. After the arena is complete, I end up using a gravitation potion in order to explore the sky a little bit, hopefully finding a sky island. We are able to find both a shiny red balloon and a Star Fury on our trip to space, so I return home in order to prepare for the Eye of Cthulhu fight. The Eye of Cthulhu fight was certainly one of the more frustrating boss fights for me in this run. When it comes to its second phase in Expert and Master mode, where it gets extremely fast, it can be very difficult to hit the Eye of Cthulhu with the projectiles from either the Star Fury or the Enchanted Sword. So your best bet is to basically try to get in as many hits as possible and watching your health as you inevitably get hit in order to hit him back. After defeating the Eye of Cthulhu, I used Criminite in order to craft the Blood Butcher, as that's something I neglected to do earlier, as I wanted to spend the Criminite on armor earlier when I had it. Later on, during the exploration of the underground, I get a notification that the Goblin Army is approaching, something I had been waiting a while for. The Goblin Army is certainly quite a difficult task with only swords. However, at this point in the game, we have some pretty powerful upgrades that certainly mitigate the difficulty considerably. After defeating the Goblin Army, I work on expanding my Hell of Air more in hopes of finding the Goblin Tinkerer underground, as well as getting ever closer to Hell so we can start mining obsidian and hellstone in order to make the next sword. With no luck finding the Goblin Tinkerer, I decide to switch things up a bit and head to the underground desert biome again in order to get the Golfer, which I forgot to get earlier. Thankfully, we were able to find him very quickly, and on a return trip to the underground, I end up finding the Goblin Tinkerer with our newly acquired Hunter Potions. It is at this point I realized I have yet to take down King Slime, so I summon it in order to make sure I defeated it, as well as to be able to buy Daybloom Panther boxes from the Dryad. Unfortunately, at this point, I had some corrupted footage. It was basically just me exploring Hell, getting some Hellstone, and making the Molten Armor, the Fiery Greatsword, and the Molten Pick. I spend the next good while fishing in the ocean in order to both acquire crates, which contain the Tsunami in a Bottle and the Sailfish Boots, as well as the Frog Leg, as this can combine with the Sailfish Boots to make Amphibian Boots, one of my favorite mobility accessories in Journey's End. At this point, I do feel pretty ready to take on the Queen Bee, so I go to a beehive that I found earlier and set up Arena in order to take it on. Unfortunately, we didn't get the Beekeeper this time, so I have to fight her a few more times in order to make sure I can get that Beekeeper. I spend the next few days starting construction on the World Bridge that will span most of my world, as this is going to be very important for fighting hard mode bosses later on, as you really need to use expansive amounts of space, especially with the setup that we're going to have to use. After we can basically prepare no more, I decide to start working on the arena to take on Skeletron and to enter the dungeon. Out of all of the fights in this run, Skeletron certainly ranks as one of the more difficult. It can be very difficult to consistently get hits on his hands with either the Enchanted Sword or the Star Fury, and his hands move around very sporadically. So my best bet was to get in as many swings with the Fiery Greatsword on his hands when I could. That being said, enjoy the fight. After defeating Skeletron, I immediately opened the treasure bag to receive probably one of the most important items in this entire run, the Bone Glove. Before Journey's End, the Bone Glove was a ranged item that let you throw bones for increased damage. However, when almost no one used it, the devs decided to turn it into a surprisingly useful accessory that shoots out projectiles whenever you use a weapon or even a tool. This is obviously going to be really important in this run, as we're going to need all of the extra damage we can get and extra projectiles we can get, especially when it comes to early hard mode. But we'll get to that when we get there. After defeating Skeletron, we are finally able to enter the dungeon. At this point, the dungeon isn't that difficult, as we are basically endgame gear for easy mode. However, there are definitely some things we are going to want to get, such as the Cobalt Shield, the Muramasa, and the Shadow Key. The next boss on the chopping block is, in fact, the Wall of Flesh, the final boss of easy mode. Now, out of all of the bosses in the run, you might expect this one to be really hard, and it is, but it's not for the reason you might think. The hardest part about this fight is just creating a proper arena for the Star Fury to really show its true power. You see, when used underground, the Star Fury's star can be inhibited by blocks above you. So we're going to need to make a tall enough ceiling in our arena against the Wall of Flesh fight to make sure that we can properly hit him with the stars coming down from above. In between the exploration and the excavation of hell, I did get a lot of farming done, as I want to get done before we enter hard mode. Just a lot of boss farming for money. I farmed some blood moons in order to obtain 2 shark tooth necklaces. These are going to be very important for later. And I also spent some time fishing for potion ingredients. With all of the prep needed to be done, it was finally time to take on the Wall of Flesh. So, enjoy. After finally defeating Wall of Flesh, we have officially entered hard mode in the Zenith Swords Only Challenge. While one of the first big hurdles for the run has finally been conquered, that being the Wall of Flesh, there are certainly much more difficulty to come. So, I hope you can come back next time. We will be taking on hard mode and starting the difficult journey to our next weapon. Hey, thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. I really appreciate all the support I've been getting recently with the Summoner series and the live streams. And I want to formally thank every single one of you for making the end of 2021 so much better for me. I faced a lot of hardship at the end of that year, but you guys definitely made it so much better. I have a lot planned for this year to make it an amazing year for the channel. So if you want to join that roller coaster, please subscribe down below. It means the world. And if you want to stay super updated on everything, please go ahead and join the Discord below. We have an amazing community there. And again, go sub to Chief Logan, linked in the description down below. Super cool dude. I expect great things to come from him. As for part 2 of the Zenith's Only Sword Challenge, it should be out no later than a week from the day of release. Thank you so much, and have a great day.